It just sucks. And like, I'm glad I fought for this fucking law so I have the protection that I deserve and I don't have to deal with this anymore. Because I shouldn't have to keep dealing with this. No victim should have to keep dealing with this. Like, they've already done their time with it, and that is why I fought for this law, so that victims would have the indefinite protection that they deserve and they wouldn't have to keep being brought up to them. So, he filed, so I'm sure he'll get it lifted because he's been good and followed all the rules. And I'll still be protected because I fucking worked hard and got a law passed to make sure that I was protected and that every victim everywhere is protected.
What's going on, America? I'm the right-winged angel, Oliver Mack, and today I have another very special guest. So please show some love by hitting the like button for Kayleigh Kozak. Say hello, Katie. Kayleigh,
Hi. That's all right.
All right. So how are you doing today?
Good. Really good. Like I said earlier, it's cold here in Arizona. We are not used to this cold weather.
Awesome. Yeah. Hey, it's like 70 degrees here in Houston, Texas. So I'm feeling pretty good. All right. So before we get started, I wanted you to kind of introduce yourself and tell the audience how you got started doing what you're doing. I know you have a very, very, very inspiring story that we want to talk about. So go ahead, let's get into it.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for having me on and for taking time to listen to my story and my mission. My name is Kayleigh Kozak, and up until, well, now 2020, can't say last year now, I was just a stay-at-home mom. I have 5 kids. Life is crazy. And I didn't even really know what my purpose was. I thought about doing nursing school, just trying to find my way. And unfortunately, in 2020 in January, I got a phone call that just changed my life. And that's because I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And after 15 years, I was notified by the Arizona Adult Probation Department informing me that the man who sexually abused me as a child was motioning for early termination from his 2 terms of lifetime probation.
Wow.
And as if that's not enough to stomach and take in and wrap your head around, to know that in fact, these sex offenders get off their probation, their lifetime probation early every month. And then to learn that that was my only means of protection, I couldn't even believe that that was a reality that I was facing. And so that just kind of started me on this journey of fighting for victims' rights and ultimately their protection that they deserve. Because no one should have to do what I had to do, which is reface their abuser and ask a judge, please don't lift their probation. If their probation is gone, so is my protection. And that's how this whole thing got started.
Right. Wow. Yeah. Incredible story. No one should have to go through that. So I commend you for doing what you did. Now, there was a bill passed in your name. Is that correct? And what state was that bill passed in?
Yeah. So that was in Arizona. So pre-COVID, I had to go to court, and like I said, in February, and face my abuser, because if his probation was lifted, I would be left with no protection. I couldn't file for a restraining order. I couldn't file for an injunction against harassment because, get this, I wasn't in current danger.
Oh,
so
wow.
I said, wait a second. So you're telling me if his probation is gone and there's nothing in place, he can just show up outside my house with no consequence? Yeah. So you're going to give him the opportunity to even consider it with no consequence? Well, that is how it is. Yeah. And I kept, everyone I asked, I mean, from the lowest level of just, love our police officers, but everyday police officers, to the judge herself. What kind of protection do you have for me? There is none. It's like it was just this assumption that there's always protection for victims when in fact there was not.
Right.
And so after I had to go face him in court in February of 2020, which again is something no victim should ever have to do. And then that following week, I emailed my senator and said, hey, I want to pursue a new law. I have no idea what I'm doing, but
Mhm.
this has to change.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to note, and we can touch more on this later. I had no fucking idea what I was doing. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't know who my senator was. I didn't know who my represented. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I was doing because something had to change.
Right.
And so she never responded to me because the next week COVID happened and nothing else in the world mattered.
Nope. Nothing else mattered.
And
Crazy.
so, like, I think like most people, you know, in our lifetime, when we look back and tell our kids, that was a very unknown time, and we didn't know a
Mhm.
lot of things. And so
Right.
nobody cared about that. And I didn't know this at the time either. The legislative session had already started. It was
Mhm.
not a good time. And so I let, you know, time go by. And then in October of 2020, I was in a really dark place.
Mhm.
We are not meant to be locked in our homes. Five
Right.
children are not meant to be locked in their homes.
Not at all.
My husband works at the nuclear power plant here in Arizona, and he was
Mhm.
working outage, which is where he works 6 12-hour shifts for six
Wow.
to 8 weeks, and he was on nights. So I'm also trying to keep my kids quiet. I can't even go to the park, you
Mhm.
know? So I was in a very dark place. And in October, I just decided something has to change. I can't live like this anymore. And so on October 30th, I made a commitment to myself to fight for myself and to fight for others. And I started 75 Hard with Andy Frisella's program. Do you know about that?
Yeah, I do. Yep.
Yes. So his program changed my life. And that has been such a huge part of this journey. But I
Mhm.
started that and I called my senator's office until they answered the phone and got me scheduled because
Nice.
too much time had gone by. Every
Mhm.
day that went by was another day that a victim didn't have the protection that they deserved.
Right.
And so I met with her in December. So it was pretty quick. And she had her attorneys there. And she said, "Are we sure she's not overlooking something? Like, are we sure there's no protection?" And
Mhm.
they said, "No, once that probation is gone, there's nothing." And I think she shared the same sentiment of like shock and heartbreak that this wasn't okay.
Mhm.
And so in January, we drafted a bill, SB 1412. And as you go through the legislative process and the bill process, a lot of things change. There's amendments, there's a lot of legal terminology. Um, Terminology is huge, and we can talk about that. But we drafted an initial bill,
Mhm.
and the bill was to ultimately give victims the option to petition the court for that true and definite protection that they deserve.
Right.
So that's how the bill got started.
Awesome. Yes. Awesome. Congratulations to you. Round of applause for that. That
Thank
is
you.
awesome. Yeah, because I know, I mean, it takes a lot of work to do those things. It takes a lot of dedication, and you were clearly dedicated to do that. And I know, you know, for you, I know it's not just about your case, it's about other cases that may come up where the victims could be in a bad situation. I mean, it could be, you know, a lot of times with these sexual assault victims, especially, well, actually females and males, it's a family member. So it
Yep.
could be someone who gets out of prison. It's a family member, it's an uncle, it's a cousin, or something like that. And now you're at these family functions, and there's your abuser right there. So, you know, that's definitely going to save them from that trauma.
You know, it's 93% of victims know their perpetrator. And
Hmm.
something that I kind of keep coming back to as I have these conversations is there's such a stigma with sexual abuse and rape and sexual assault, right? So
Hmm.
I think so many people associate like rape or sexual assault with almost like law and order like situations, like some
Right.
stranger off the street. And that's not to say that those things don't happen, because they do, but that is not
Hmm.
the everyday thing. The
Yeah.
more common abuse that's happening is a close family friend or a family member,
Hmm.
93%. And why is that being overlooked? Why are we not taking that more seriously? Why are victims just being, "Oh, you're just making it something it's not," when it is something. And I think I speak for a lot of victims in my own situation. When I turned my abuser in when I was just 14 years old,
Hmm.
I questioned, this is different. He didn't mean to hurt me because he groomed me. He groomed my entire
Wow.
family. So this is different. This isn't I wasn't kidnapped and held at gunpoint and molested.
Mhm.
That's what being molested or raped is, not what happened to me. This is different. When he groomed me and sexually abused me for 2 years. And so there's just this stigma that we have to break, and we have to let victims know they're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there's just so many little girls, and they get to be the age of women and boys and men who don't speak out, who these crimes, they go unpunished.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know the statistics on this, but I would say like there's a large percentage of those crimes that never get reported. And how do you feel about that? Or do you think that I guess it's justified that that they fear reporting the person who hurt them?
Well, it makes me sick. And unfortunately, more cases go unreported than not for so
Mhm.
many different reasons.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you were going to bring it up, but the Maxwell trial, if you want to
Yeah.
look at that, okay, and that's on a huge popular scale, right?
Right.
And we don't even have the names of these people, and we absolutely should, and every single one of them should be prosecuted, and
Mhm.
we should know. But I'm telling you, it's no different on the smaller level. Right now, our system works for defending and helping the perpetrators. They don't care about the victims. And I know that because I'm fighting it firsthand.
Yeah.
And so when you have victims that want to report, but they feel like, one, nobody will believe them, and two, what proof do they have? It's really important to note that more cases than not are actually reported later, years later.
Mhm.
And a lot of that, there's so many different reasons. The sexual assault, rape, all these things, it's not black and white. It is
Mhm.
very, very gray.
Right.
And so victims, sometimes all they have is their word. In
Mhm.
my case, I reported 2 years after, like almost 2 years after the abuse had stopped.
Mhm.
And the only reason that I was able to pin my perpetrator is because we did a confrontation call and he admitted to everything. Had
Really?
we not had that, I don't know what would have happened.
So
I
how
don't
does
know
it?
that,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't know if a case would have ever, I don't know what would have happened.
So I've never heard of a confrontation call. How does that work?
So here in Arizona, we're one of the few states, I think one of three,
Mhm.
I could be wrong. Don't hold me to that, but I think we're one of three where it's a one party um one party what's the
Consent
word? Yes, thank you.
to record, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like what you would envision. They take you in this room and they put headphones on everybody and you've got
Mhm.
computer screens or whiteboards in front of you.
Yeah.
And again, back to the terminology, you have to say certain things as the victim and they have to say certain things as the perpetrator to pin them.
Oh
And
wow.
so you call and you basically have to come up with a story and get your perpetrator to admit to things. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's super easy, and other times they pick up and they hang up and they don't talk to you. What number is this from?
Yeah.
And technology has come a very long way.
Mhm.
So, but that's in Arizona, that's how it works. It gets very difficult in other states because you don't have that one party consent. That
Right.
was the word. Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Um,
So,
Yeah. So you were talking about the Maxwell trial, and I think it's pretty obvious that there was definitely a lot going on. Probably a lot of celebrities that would never get exposed because they sealed everything. But one thing that came up throughout this trial, and something that actually it was a story that I read about yesterday that I posted about today. Unfortunately, they took it down, but anyway, I'm gonna talk about it anyway. So a lot of the parents have been complicit in these sexual abuse and these sexual assault cases. And there was a story that I posted today where there was a mother who, get this, she sold her 5-year-old daughter to a 37-year-old man for sex. And then the man ended up killing the little girl. And then she goes on the news. She goes to donate toys. And then she's talking to the news cameras, talking about how much she loved her daughter and she's fake crying. And I'm like, you sold your daughter to a 37-year-old man so he can have sex with her. Like, what is wrong with these people? But I just hear about it so much that these parents are actually selling their own children to adults for sex. Like, what do you think about that?
I think we live in a sick world.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I don't know when it became acceptable. It's not acceptable, but in their world, in that elite world that these people are living in for whatever reason it is, I think the devil is just full blown in force in these areas. And I don't understand why anybody, not even a parent, like, what is wrong with you? We live in a world full of sick narcissists, and I don't even know. I don't know. I just can't understand.
Yeah, we saw it in the I don't know if you're familiar with R. Kelly, but we saw it in the R. Kelly case. A lot of the parents, they were basically saying, yeah, you can go with this guy. You know, this was 14, 15-year-old girls. And they're like, basically, yeah, just do whatever you please with her. Just bring her back home. And I'm like, what is wrong with these people? It's like people have just gotten to the point where they don't really care about their children. A lot of children are born to benefit the parents. They don't care about raising a independent human being that is going to go on to be successful. All they care about is, okay, how can I benefit from this child? You know, you see a lot of the children that are like 5 years old with their own Instagram accounts or their own TikTok accounts because parents want to get fame. They want to get money off their children. And it's like today, it's like any means necessary. So whatever that means, I'm going to look at anybody who is in a position of power, anybody who's famous, anybody who has money, and I'm going to use my child as leverage to get some of that money or to get some of that fame. And it's very, very disgusting. So I wanted to ask you, like, what role did your parents play in the situation that you had?
So that's one of the hot questions that I get. And I always like to start out with stressing that my parents did everything right. And people have said, there's certain incidents where things happen. They're like, well, didn't your parents ask you, or didn't your parents tell you if someone touches you or does that? Absolutely. My parents had those conversations with me. But when you're groomed and your family is groomed, it's really hard to understand unless you're in that situation, if that makes sense. So to hopefully help other people understand, especially if they are maybe dealing with like a similar situation. So my abuser was my PE teacher and my soccer coach. And when you send your kids to school, you don't think, oh, I'm sending my child to school and they're going to be molested. Right. And this was my mom's coworker.
Oh, wow.
And if you go back and read the testimonies of people that spoke on behalf of him or for him, mind you, this was prior to the phone call being released, because once that confrontation call was released, a lot of people changed their tune very quickly. But sex offenders, not all of them, but they are very intelligent people. They are true narcissists. And so when someone like my abuser, this news comes out, people don't believe that someone who's that guy's so good. He loves his soccer team. He loves his job. He loves his students. Right. It's his whole life. And so they almost put them on a pedestal because they would never. But those are the guys that we have to look out for. And so my parents had all those conversations with me. They trusted him with everything for so many different reasons. And they never once questioned him, but he had also groomed them. And on top of that, he when I turned him in, I didn't even realize I was turning him in, because that's how he had me so mentally like this was different. He loved me. I was a woman trapped in a young girl's body.
Wow.
I was going to go somewhere with soccer and all these things. And my parents, when I turned him in, it wasn't that they didn't believe me. They had a really hard time believing it was him because they had a relationship with him. They trusted him.
Right.
And so to kind of go off of that though, my husband is a true inside outsider, right? Like he wasn't around when this all happened, but he's obviously around now.
Yeah.
And so he says like, well, how could your parents ever like, how could they ever do that or think that or do this? And I have to tell him, Kelsey, it's no different than if I hate to say it, but you have a bunch of guy friends over and you're outside having a good time and they go to the garage to get a beer and there's one of your teenage daughters standing there and they grope them. Like it happens.
Yeah.
These things happen right before our eyes. And I don't know if we're just blind. I don't know. I don't know why we don't see it. But my parents did everything right. He just had me so mentally messed up that I thought it was different what he was doing to me.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I can definitely see where you're coming from with that. I actually had a situation in my own family. I'm not going to talk about who it is, not yet, but where, one of my cousins was actually molested and in a sexual relationship with a grown man, starting when she was 9 years old up until she was 15 or 16. So, and she was groomed to believe it was okay. And, I can definitely see, how that happens. And I know it has a huge impact psychologically on a lot of girls and a lot of women. Would you say that it impacted you even when you were an adult, or did you kind of come to terms with it, or did the bill actually help with with you getting through it?
Do you just mean like in an overall sense?
Yeah, like did it affect you in any way in terms of maybe your relationships or maybe your health wise or anything like that?
Well, that's a tough one. I like to say it didn't affect me, I think, how people would normally think. Like I didn't turn to drugs or, I'm not a big drinker or anything like that. I'm not a big coping person. I am a teen mom. I did get pregnant when I was 17. And I do think that absolutely played a role in it because I was groomed to think that, being sexually active was okay and normal. But my husband and I have been together 14 years and our 10-year wedding anniversary will be in March. We have 5 kids.
Wait, March when? What's the date?
17th.
Okay. Me and my wife is March 3rd.
Oh, so super close. How many years?
It'll be 9 years in March. So we're right behind you.
Yeah. So, I mean, it didn't affect me in that way. And I think the things that you would initially think, like how it would affect a victim. And I think I do know why. I'm not 100% sure why, but I have always been very headstrong and confident, and just very driven in things. And it was so hard for me, but the only thing that made sense to me was that I always wondered why God put me through this. Why did I have to go through this? Why did a good God allow something so bad to happen to me? And I questioned that for a very long time. And now I can look back and say, okay, God, I see the purpose for my pain. I see that you had me go through this very dark, difficult time to come out on the other side and help others. But I was able to forgive my abuser deep in my heart. And the weight that came off of me when I was able to tell him that. Because I don't have to carry that weight as a victim. And I think that's what victims need to know. You don't have to carry that weight. You don't have to carry the weight of what was done to you. You don't have to carry the weight of the decisions that your abuser made or that they may or may not, the things they may or may not do. I don't have to carry that weight. God does not want me to carry that weight. And I think the forgiveness and really coming to terms with that has helped me be as okay as I am. And that's not to say I don't have bad days, because I absolutely do.
Mhm.
But I feel like God he truly had a purpose for me going through what I did to be where I'm at today, because had I not experienced it, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today.
All right. You think it made you a stronger person?
Yes, I do.
Awesome.
Um, After, people are always so shocked by this, but the week that I turned my abuser in and he was arrested, we went to a
Mhm.
soccer tournament down in Tucson, and almost the entire club was wearing shirts that said, "We support our coach." And
Wow.
my parents said, "We can leave." But I didn't want to leave. I just wanted to play soccer. That was my
Mhm.
life. That was my escape, as cliche as it sounds. I
Mhm.
just wanted to play. And so I was able to shut that out and play the game. Um, but after that, I mean, going through the whole trial and that whole, well, actually, I never had a trial, going through the whole process of turning
Mhm.
him in and his plea deal and things. And then my family completely fell apart. I mean, completely. My dad left. My mom made some pretty crappy choices. She's
Mhm.
better now, but this is all a domino effect of these things that people just aren't talking about enough. And I was really forced to, I mean, just really buck up and make choices to be better or go the other way. And I did not want to go the other way.
Yeah. Do you think it forced you to grow up faster than a lot of other 14-year-olds?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I can't imagine, you bring these charges against someone and you have all these people that are basically saying, no, we don't believe her, we support our coach. Like that is just ridiculous. And it kind of goes to a lot of what we see today in politics and entertainment, where this person can become so big, this person can become so loved that they can't do anything wrong. It's
Hmm.
like no matter what, people want to see them in this positive light. And if there are any accusations against them, they're like, oh, that didn't happen. And we had this whole, I hate to go here, but with the whole Me Too movement, right? So I think that really, really tainted, or it cast a lot of doubt on real victims, because we had so many of these cases that were coming out and they turned out to be false. Like,
Yeah.
what did you think, being a real victim when this whole Me Too movement was going on?
I was insulted,
Yeah.
very. And the damage that comes from those things, it's, some people can't recover from that. And it makes them, you already feel defeated enough trying to fight your battle. And then you
Mhm.
have things like that happen. And then you feel like, why even bother?
Right.
And no one, and if they're going to make those things up, it's just, it, very insulted. That's the word that I use for that.
Yeah. And how did you feel about the whole Brett Kavanaugh case, and what happened with his accuser? And it turned out to be completely false, fabricated. I think it was fabricated by Democrats who wanted to find anything to not have him be sworn in. So they kind of concocted this crazy story. So were you paying attention to that when it happened?
Not as closely. So I go through like spurts where it's like I'm mentally in a place where I can follow those things and it doesn't
Hmm.
bother me. And then
Yeah.
other times it's, I can't even mentally get there. Like
Yeah.
I could listen and watch it, but I have a true mental block. And so I didn't really follow that case.
Hmm.
Um and what, I'm trying to think, what year was that? That was 2000,
Was it
gosh.
18 or 19?
I feel like it was 2018.
Yeah, I think it was 18, maybe.
I think so.
I
Let's
know
see,
I
when
know I
was that?
reported on it, and I think I started my Instagram page like late. Well, I think I started like late 2019. I don't know, but it was around that time.
Yeah, I think it was in 2018, and I just had my fifth baby, and so it's like I've really had to learn, even with things that I'm doing right now, how to take off my working I'm a survivor. I'm not a victim,
Yeah.
cap and that, and then be mom and then take off the mom cap and be here because
Yeah.
I don't want to take that out on my kids or be distracted. And even when I got that phone call in January of 2020,
Mm-hmm.
the toll that took on my family. I mean, I was so distracted. I felt like I couldn't even see straight, just trying to
Mm-hmm.
process all of that. And so I have gotten really good at focusing when I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And when I'm doing that, I'm doing that, and trying not to ever be distracted by, the other one when I'm doing my specific job.
Yeah.
But I do know that, yeah, I agree that it was fabricated, and you hear these stories and they don't, it's just, it works against victims in a
Right.
totally different way.
Right.
It's different than working against, I mean, it's one thing to work for the perpetrator and against the victim, but then things like that work so against the victims, it makes you feel hopeless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I can't imagine looking at something like that and, being someone, like I said, who's a survivor, and seeing someone that's just coming out and you can tell it's a completely fabricated story. And I mean, with the media and what Democrats are doing, when you have something that's an accusation against a Republican, it gets all these headlines, it gets all this news coverage. But with anything comes out against a Democrat, it's like, oh, what is that? We didn't hear that. No, we're just going to ignore that and pretend like it didn't happen. Joe
Look
Biden
at the
has
Cuomo.
accusations against him, right?
Yep. And the Cuomo stuff. And I mean, the CNN,
Yep.
why is no one talking about this?
Yeah, all these people are coming out with CNN and it's like CNN just has are you a child sex abuser? And they put that in an application, and if they don't check yes, then they won't hire them. That's what it seems like.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
And could you imagine if it was Fox that had that stuff going on? Could you
Oh,
imagine?
it would never happen. They would
And
never allow that.
it's hard because, like, this stuff shouldn't be politicized, but it is. Even
Right.
everything that I've done and I'm doing, like my organization, I have to file under a C4 because I can't file under a C3 because I'm fighting for legislative change because it's
Mm-hmm.
politicized.
Yeah.
And you can't cross that line when you're a
Right.
C3. And so it's great to have C3 organizations like Turning Point, for example, spreading good information and encouraging people and, getting them all fired up and things. That's great. But they're not actively fighting for change. Whereas I am.
Right.
I am not willing to give up my voice to file under a C3 so someone can donate to me and have it be tax exempt. I'm
Mm-hmm.
facing an uphill battle as it is, but then, I'm not willing to say, oh, well, I need donations. Like, I'd rather, I guess, be in the hole and be able to use my voice and fight for these legal changes than be under a C3 and get tax exempt donations.
Right.
And so when you have like the media and stuff and all these things happening, and you're just like, you want to fight for change so much.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see like it's one side. And if it was Republican, I couldn't even imagine like the border, and not to change, it's same subject, but it's not. Could you
Mm-hmm.
imagine, would you deal with it in Texas if
Right.
we had this border stuff and Trump was in office? Like,
Oh yeah, you remember the whole kids in cages narrative?
do you know, I mean, here in Arizona, but I'm sure you guys hear the same things in Texas. In 1 week, they caught 5 previously convicted sex offenders trying to cross the border.
Really?
4 of which were convicted for child sex, whatever their charges were, sexual endangerment or whatever. It's not whatever. I just don't remember the specific things, but
No, it's
they
okay.
were pedophiles. And could you imagine if Trump was in office and the CNN got a hold of that? 5 child predators crossing the border in Arizona. Where is Trump?
Yep.
Where is the Biden? Where is Doug Ducey?
Yep.
I mean, at least your governor's trying to put up
Yes.
a wall. Ours is
Yeah.
not.
Right. Yeah, he is trying. I'll give him credit for that. Now you saw when Trump was president, and you had all these raids where they were catching so many children that were being sex trafficked, and the media said nothing about it.
Yeah.
Like they wanted to bury it. Like it's so crazy how we're polarized in the United States today, and in the media they refuse to tell the truth if it makes Republicans look bad, or if it makes the left look, or if they refuse to tell the truth if it makes Republicans look good, and they also refuse to tell the truth if it makes Democrats look bad. So it sucks to be in this type of environment, but that's why people like me, people like you, are fighting for. We're fighting for our children. And one thing I wanted to ask you: so, do you have daughters?
I have 4.
4 daughters
Mm-hmm.
and 1 son, 1 boy.
Yep. 1 boy, right in the middle.
Wow, that's amazing.
Pray for me.
Oh, you got it. So, like, I guess a big thing with parenting, you don't want your children to make the same mistakes you made or go through the same things that you went through when you were a child. That's something big for me. But for you, what do you tell your daughters? Like, is there something that you tell them, hey, make sure you look out for this? Or is it something that you tell them, hey, make sure you don't do this or whatever? Like, is that something that you go through with your daughters right now?
Absolutely, especially in this category. My oldest daughter she'll be 12 next month.
Okay.
And so when this whole thing started and, they really saw me hurting and things, you don't want to tell them everything. And then you also don't want to dump that stress on them, what happened. But as I started pursuing this law, specifically here in Arizona, and my older girls saw me get more involved in things, my husband and I had the tough conversation of, okay, how in detail do we talk to them? This is real. This is happening. And my oldest daughter is the same age that I was when I was being sexually abused.
Wow.
So it's like you look at your children and you think they're too young and innocent. I don't want them to know. You want to protect them from these evils of the world. When the reality is those evils are happening every single day. Yeah. So we made it was a very difficult decision to specifically talk to my oldest daughter about just what had happened to me, and to hopefully share with her that it can happen anywhere. You trust no one. And sharing with her, because she did ask me, she said, well, what did Nene and Grandpa, did they know? And telling her, no, they didn't know. She said, well, why didn't you tell them? And those are really difficult conversations. And how do you get that across to an 11-year-old? Right. But we have just kind of come to terms with, we have to be just blunt and honest with them. Because as much as we want to keep the evil world from them, if they don't know, they don't know. And if we can get to it before the evil gets to them, then at least maybe they can be somewhat prepared.
Right. So do you have a message for not just your daughter, but for other little girls out there, something that they should look out for?
If something doesn't feel right, talk to someone. Even if it's not your parent, talk to someone who you can trust. Because if something doesn't feel right, chances are it's not right. And even if you're unsure, find a trusted adult to navigate through it with you. Because when you have someone who can help you look at it differently and see things for what they really are, your eyes will be opened. And sometimes that's all you need. And it's hard to open up to people, but it can be the best thing for you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You heard it right there. So, Kayleigh, I thank you so much for your story. It's very inspirational. I know there are a lot of girls and women that have been through what you've been through, that may currently be going through something that you went through. So definitely hearing your story can have a big impact. And you're so brave to share it. Like we talked about earlier, there's a lot of these stories that never get out because they're never reported. So just know that you have a voice, and all the young girls out there and boys, because I know this happens to boys too. I'm not going to say it's just a female thing. It does happen to boys. So, you do have a voice. There are people that will back you. There are people who will believe your story. Just make sure you tell somebody, make sure you get it out there, because there are so many children out there that are suffering at the hands of some evil, sadistic people that just want to, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what the purpose of what they're doing with these sexual fantasies or whatever they're doing, but it really needs to stop. It really needs to stop.
Yeah.
I think we need to get harsher on some of the sentencing for these people. And you got something to say about that? So go ahead.
Yeah. Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I personally, after walking through this all here in Arizona, so every third Friday of the month, these sex offenders get to go and motion to have their sentence lifted or shortened.
Early.
Why is this why are they even giving them an option? This is here in Maricopa County. I can't even speak for the entire state. So I personally believe, which is why I'm just fighting for everything that I'm fighting for, that there are not harsh enough punishments. They know they can get away with it. For example, again, here in Arizona, if you plead down, which my parents took a plea deal because they did not want to put me through a trial. And I am so thankful for them for that decision that they made. They made the right decision. However, my abuser pled down, and he pled to his counts, and then he pled to level 1 sex offender, which he should not be, and 2 terms of lifetime probation. Here's the comical thing. Level 1 sex offenders are not on the public registry here in Arizona. That's a problem.
Wow.
So you have these attorneys having these true sick child molesters plea down to level 1, so they're not on the public registry. And then their attorneys are saying, well, yeah, take lifetime, because in 7 to 14 years, you can have your lifetime probation lifted. Short sentence, short probation. And so they're working the system, and who's holding them accountable? No one. You go to these court hearings and you just watch these judges and these attorneys, and it almost feels like you're in a movie. Like, is this really happening? You go in, the whole right side of the courtroom is full of 30 to 50 sex offenders, and they're just one off oh yeah, we'll lift yours early. Oh yeah, you've been good. Oh, you completed your treatment. Why are they given this option? Why are their punishments not harsher? That is a huge part of the problem right now. But people, what you don't know, and people don't, one, they don't know that these are problems, and 2, they don't think that they can get involved and that their voice matters. I'm telling you right now, it does matter. And when I started pursuing all of this, I very, very quickly realized this was not about me. This was about fighting for hundreds of millions of victims and survivors of sexual and domestic abuse.
Right.
This goes far beyond my journey. And that is why it's wonderful that this law has passed here in Arizona, but Arizona is not enough. There's 49 other states that need to pass this law, victims that need protection. And I'm not going to stop until victims across our nation have the protection that they deserve. And they don't even know that they don't have it, but I'm going to make sure they know, and I'm going to make sure that they get the protection.
Right. Now, was this a Republican-led bill, or was it bipartisan?
So it was Republican-led, and that's just because I went with my elected senator. And so she is a Republican. God knew I needed her for this journey. She is a good one. There are some dirty, scummy politicians. Actually, there was a representative here in Arizona that voted yes for my bill, and he was arrested in June or July on multiple counts of child molestation.
Wow.
Yep, 2 young boys. Yep. Sex offenders are. This is something that everyone needs to hear. Wherever you are, there are sex offenders. It's a harsh reality, but it's a true one.
Right.
But it was Republican led, and it did get complete bipartisan support. Complete. And my senator, she always tells me I'm spoiled because I have so many bills that I'm working on now. And that I want to, get federally drafted, and these common sense things. And I say, okay, we got to get this going. And she's like, well, most bills don't work like that. Like, they don't fly through session with complete bipartisan support in 4 months and pass.
Yeah.
But what does that go to show you about this topic?
Mm-hmm.
It goes to show you that it doesn't matter what side you're on. Molestation, rape, abuse, sexual, domestic abuse, it can happen. It doesn't matter where you are, where you stand.
Yeah, we should all agree it's bad.
Yes. When I spoke, I testified on behalf of the Judiciary Committee here in Arizona. And I remember thinking, like, did that really just happen? After I testified, one of the representatives, who was one of the most far right representatives, spoke on my behalf. And then one of the representatives, who's pretty far left, spoke on my behalf. And I remember wanting to say, do you guys see what you just did? Like, you agreed. You can do it. It's possible.
Yep.
But that goes to show you, like, this issue, and it shouldn't be politicized, and it's not a right or left thing. Yet our mainstream media, which is, in my opinion, the biggest problem we have in our world today, makes it one side. That is a fact. Fact check that shit.
Yep, that's right. That is definitely a fact. The mainstream media is the enemy of the people. There are a lot of times that Republicans and Democrats should be able to come together on things that make sense, on things that help everyone. But the mainstream media will do everything in their power to pit Republicans and Democrats against each other. And it's usually in favor of the left, unfortunately, but that's what they're in the business to do now, because the mainstream media used to be in the business of just giving us the news, right? But they saw that they're unable to make as much money just giving us the news as they are polarizing us and making sure that we fight each other, and making sure that one side is terrified and the other side is seen as evil monsters that want to, make everybody sick and kill everybody. So, that's what the mainstream media is doing now. And I just wish one day, I'm hoping, I'm praying that we can get out of this. I'm praying that one day these people will be exposed for what they're doing and exposed for the monsters there are. But that's just
I'm
my
right there with
prayer.
you. I'm right there with you. Hey, so something I wanted to tell you about, because as I get involved with other states and things, because right now I'm going state to state. I'm also working on federal, so it just kind of depends on what happens first. But so many people think that they can't get involved with their government, and it starts at the lowest level, to the highest level. But I don't know, in Texas, were you aware that you guys have I want to make sure I get the terminology right, called a house witness registration?
I have no idea what that is.
So as a resident there, you can go down to the Capitol and you can sign up for this, and then it just gives you the ability to get on and vote for bills, or even go speak on behalf of bills. So for example, if my bill got to Texas, hoping it does, you would be able, as a Texas resident, to go down when the bill is going through the certain committee sessions, and you would be able to speak as a Texas resident on behalf of the bill.
Okay, nice.
And so I can send you the information on that, but I think it's really important, no matter what state you're in, and it's hard, and I get it, and a lot of people don't know this exists, but to really dig in and see how involved can you get in legislative bills. And I don't know for fact, but I'm assuming this is similar to Arizona's RTS, which is called a request to speak here. And it just gives us the ability as residents to go on and vote for or against a bill. And then that gives our legislators backing when they go to present these bills, saying, hey, I have 700 people in support of this, and I have 1,500 that are against it. And unfortunately, you won't be surprised by this, it's mostly Democrats that know about this. So you'll have the Democrats go in, and all these names will be on there, and they'll say, oh, well, we have thousands of residents that are for keeping the border open. When if people just knew that they could actually get involved and do those things, they would. And I believe in Texas it's the same, but it gives us the ability to go speak and testify. And there is nothing more I don't even know, exciting than going and
Mhm.
testifying before your legislators and putting them on blast.
I would love to do that. I would
You
love
should
to do
look
that.
into it.
Yeah, definitely. Please send me the information because I would love to do that.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, one question for you. So, um, will you ever run for office?
I'm praying about it.
Yeah.
I am praying about it. My heart definitely feels led that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, every time I'm down at the Capitol, I feel like you can feel things happening, and that I want to continue that. And my passion in my heart is with fighting for justice and enhancements for victims specifically, but there are so many things that this carries over to.
Right.
Um, and I think, again, people think, I remember talking to someone like, well, I could never run for office. I don't have money. And I remember thinking, why do you need money? I mean,
No,
I
you don't need
kind of get
money.
it.
You need
I
some
kind
money,
of,
but
yeah, I kind of get it now. But I remember thinking, like, that's your reason why you wouldn't run.
yeah.
And I will tell, every time I'm down there, all the legislators, not all of them, but the ones I have connected with are like, well, you know, it's coming. Like, if you want to
Yep.
start campaigning, and I'm praying about it. It's, if that's where God calls me, I will go. I try to be mindful that I still have little kids at home,
Mm-hmm.
and I I'm not ready to put them on the back burner.
Yeah.
And if I took a position like that, it would be a lot. And my husband works a lot of hours, which is why I've always been able to be a stay-at-home mom.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm prayerful, and if God calls me, I will go. He will lead he will open the door. He has
Yeah.
not hesitated with any of this, and to him be the glory for all that has happened, and that's the only explanation. And I could talk to you all night about things that have happened, and you'd be like, what, how? And I'd be like, well, that's God. I don't know what other like thing to say, but
Yeah.
um yeah, it's on my mind and it's on my heart for sure. So
Well, that's good. I think you'll be a great, great addition to your state. What Senate? Is that what you're talking about? Senate?
Senate or House,
Senate or
whichever.
House? Yeah.
Yeah, which I
I,
don't.
I say Senate, but you pray about that. But
I'm I'm going
yeah,
I'm
you
going
have
to,
a
and
lot of support from some very powerful people in Arizona. So just know
I
that.
sh- I sure hope so. It's funny.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys had rezoning too. And my husband the other day is like, hey, so there's no senator for our new zone. And
Yeah.
I just looked at him and was like, okay, I get it. So I'm very prayerful. Our legislative session starts January 10th. And
Hmm.
so I'll be very involved with some stuff that I'm spearheading and working on. But I'm also I'm asking God to just help open my eyes to see other things. And again, open those doors if that's where he wants me.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well,
So
we'll see how it goes. But we'll end it here. I just want to thank you so much for your story. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight or today or whenever you're watching this video. Could you please give us some last words and then tell everybody where they can find you and what you got, anything new coming up that you want to get out there? So yeah, go ahead.
yeah, thank you. I think I always like to leave everyone with a little bit of encouragement and kind of like a little bit of a challenge. If you're
Mhm.
an Arizona resident or an Arizona resident, just encourage them to look into Kayleigh's Law. That's what
Mhm.
this law is called. And Kayleigh's Law provides indefinite protection for victims and survivors of sexual and domestic abuse. And if victims don't know they have that protection, they don't know that they have it. And so it's really important that we spread the word. And so I ask that, of course, social media is a great way, but I also like to challenge people to go out and tell at least 3 people about this law. And
Mhm.
even though it's just here in Arizona right now, it is currently going through the Wisconsin legislative process. And like I said, we are working on some federal drafts right now, and also with the ALEC organization. So there are things happening. And if you feel passionate about this and you want to see this law pass in your state, I'm one person and I'm so grateful for help. If you want to reach out to your local legislators
Mhm.
um, in your state and just tell them about this law, pass them my website for my organization, which is becauseyoustillmatter.org. they can look at that, and who knows, that one email or reaching out could be what ultimately leads to this bill being drafted in your state, whatever state that you're in.
Mhm.
And I want victims everywhere to know that I am doing this for you because you still matter. I am fighting for you because you still matter. And I will not stop fighting for your rights and laws that will protect you, and victims' rights being over a perpetrator's ever, for as long as I live, because you still matter.
Awesome. Thank you. Ooh, that was powerful. I should just clip that part and just make it a separate video. That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
All right,
you.
guys. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Please like this video, share it out to your family and friends, and comment down below. Tell us what you think. But that's it. We'll see you on the next video. Catch you later.
Thank
Peace.
you.